Hey, what's going on, guys? This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Vanguard, Northeast Realty, and Scarborough, vanguardany.ca. I'm Norman James, joined by Mike Augello. It's the Sunday Spectacular for June 9th, 2019. Good morning, Michelangelo.
Good morning, Norman. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm ready to get into some Leafs cues, and we will provide Convo A's. First up, some talk about Nikita Zaitsev and the fact the Maple Leafs may be able to bring something back without having to send too much the other way. Tell us about it.
Well, David Pagnotta from the fourth period reported, I think he was doing an interview on Sportsnet Radio in Vancouver, that there's been enough interest generated in Zaitsev that it doesn't look like the Leafs, even though he has 5 years left in his contract, that they would have to add a draft pick or add a prospect to get a team to take him. In fact, there's enough interest there that maybe there'll be a package deal, or but his value. I mean, his value in Toronto is probably less than his value is in other places, which is a good thing. I think the concern with other teams acquiring him is not his abilities, but the term of his deal, which is 5 years. But he is 27, so I think that's sort of pushed to the side. So I think they'll be able to make a good deal, maybe get something in return. And that's a good thing. Clearly, after a while, he got tired of the scrutiny in Toronto, and I mean, I can understand that. So, I mean, he'll move on, and hopefully, they get somebody that can withstand the scrutiny.
What scrutiny? We've never heard him talk before. He's dealt with the media less than Daniil Markov, Mike.
Well, but the criticism. I mean, everybody. I mean, if every analytics nerd in Toronto is thinks that Nikita Zaitsev is the cause of cancer, and Jake Gardiner is God's gift. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like, and that's sort of bleeded into the. Yeah, I know.
What is his worth to the Leafs now? What was his worth? That's the question.
Well, I mean, honestly, I look at, and I've sort of put this theory to other people, and they've sort of agreed with it. If you look at Zaitsev after he came over from Russia, he was top pairing. Now, maybe he's not a top pairing defenseman in the NHL, but he was top pairing. He got power play time, and he scored, I think, 36 points. He was purported to be a offensive defenseman when he was in the KHL, and he showed that in his first year. And then he signed the 7-year contract. And we know that this team is, heavy on offensive defensemen. At that point, it was Gardiner and Riley, and was light on right-hand shot defensemen. And I have the feeling, and there's no way for that I can prove this, but I like I said, I mentioned it to other people, and I said, okay, it looked to me like after they signed him to the contract, they basically said to Zaitsev, we want you to be a shutdown guy. We want you to be a penalty killer. We want you to block shots. We want you to be more of the defensive type of defenseman that we don't have, rather than the offensive defenseman that we have in plentitude. And honestly, that's not his game. And I thought that he suffered in the last 2 years because he was put in that position. And I just don't think when you place somebody in a position or in a role that they're not comfortable with, you're not going to get the best out of them. So, I mean, I think that's the reason why his play declined last year. Injuries as well. This year, I thought he was, I think, a little better, but his offensive numbers were not even there. And I think he was in top 10 in block shots in the league. So it may be a better situation for him to go. And if the Leafs can get something in return that can help them, better for them too.
I just don't see impact coming back. Ed Berlin wants to know, with Dubas getting rid of Zaitsev, apparently for value, and Marlowe, yada, yada, yada. How optimistic are you, Mike, about the Leafs cap future, at least in the immediate term?
Well, I mean, I don't know what they will take back in a Zaitsev deal. I mean, if they can get a draft pick for him and not have to hold on to any salary, that would be optimum, because then they could turn around and make a deal for another defenseman someplace else. Like Colin Miller's name has been out there the last month or so as somebody the Leafs would be interested in. He's a right-hand shot, somebody that Vegas wants to move out for cap space. I don't think Vegas is one of the teams interested in Zaitsev because they want to open up cap space. place. But the Leafs might be interested in taking him on if they can clear Zaitsev's salary. So, I mean, it might be like a 2-stage process like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's another question that I think you're going to ask me about a potential trade where one of our listeners was saying, swapping $12 million worth of salary for $12 million worth of salary. That doesn't help the Leafs right now. They're looking to clear salary to be able to sign Marner and Kapanen and Janssen. They don't want to take on big salaries. Or exchange one salary for another in a perfect situation.
Are you talking about Scott Gauthier, the Marleau and Zaitsev for Perry and Manson from Anaheim?
Yeah, and I responded to him online, but I'll just say it here. I mean, Perry's contract, and Perry, the reports came out yesterday from Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic that, either he's going to get bought out with 2 years left on his contract, or he's going to get traded and they would have retained salary. Now, we don't know how much they would retain or if they would retain anything in this proposed deal, and we're just spitballing here. But Marleau makes 6.25. Zaitsev makes 4.5. That's about 10. That's 10.75 million. Manson makes 4.1, and Perry makes 8.625 for 2 more years. So the cap hit is $2 million more. And I don't think you're getting a better defenseman in Manson, but you're not getting a better forward in Perry. Perry is done. Yeah. So they don't want to take on $2 million worth of salary. Actually, I think my math was my worst subject, so I think I misdid my calculations when I tweeted him back. But yeah, they'd be taking on $2 million more in salary, and for another year. So that doesn't help them at all. In fact, it hurts them.
If you were only an analytics nerd, Mike, you would have got all of that math right. This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough, vanguardne.ca. Perry's done with hockey. He's into real estate now. Just bought a house in London for $7.25 million or something. Everybody's going nuts because the chosen one has decided to return to London like it's a major deal. But hey, that's a big real estate transaction. When did he win the Hart? Was that like 2011, 10 or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was more recent than that, maybe 12 or 13. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was, but he, I mean, the type of game that he plays, it leads to sort of a precipitous fall, and he's had some injuries. Now, honestly, if he gets bought out and he's shopping his wares, and you're talking about a 1-year deal for $750,000. I'd roll the dice on Corey Perry, but if you're talking about inheriting $8.6 million for this year, next year, not a chance.
Yeah, funny thing about Corey Perry is that him being at the end of his career makes me feel even older. I started in London running a sports department, but 2002. Perry was with the Knights at that time, so I covered him when he was the centerpiece of that London Knights Memorial Cup winner. I went to Peterborough, did a whole thing at the arena that he played at. Bob Gainey, another legendary Peterborough guy, spent time with his family, just a big profile piece. And now he's at the end of his career, and I don't know, buying huge houses. And what am I doing here, Mike? You and I talking about the Maple Leafs, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't mind a few more dollars in my bank account, but we're getting there.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, exactly. Jeff Skinner, $9 million a year, scored 40. Again, people will analyze this and criticize this. It doesn't matter what you think. You know what matters? What the team thinks. And if you think it's robbery, if you think they overspent, too bad. No one cares. They think Jeff Skinner is worth $9 million a year, and that's what he's going to get. And all this talk about Marner being less or worth less or more, it doesn't matter what you think. It matters what the team pays. Remember, teams put a value on players the way they want to put a value on them. It's not just about data. It's not just about analytics. If somebody wants something, they're going to pay for it. So Skinner gets 9, clearly puts the Maple Leafs in a tough spot with having to pay Marner because, a lot of people will say that Marner is superior to Skinner. And then others will say that Marner is not that great because everybody else is doing the work for him, Mike. So
first of all, they're different type of players. I mean, Skinner scored 100 goals over the last 3 seasons. He had a career high 40 goals last year. I mean, I honestly think the Sabres are insane signing him at $9 million. He's now the 4th highest paid winger in the league behind.
And that's fine. And that, no, Mike, again,
or fifth. Fifth
they
highest.
can be insane. But do you
Well,
get my point though?
yeah, no. I get your point, but I mean, I'm just looking at, when I look at comparatives, and that's a lot of things that we have to do when we're gauging salaries in the cap era. Jeff Skinner is not in the same league as Patrick Kane, Nikita Kucherov, Mark Stone, and Alex Ovechkin.
Mm-hmm.
He's now fifth behind those four guys. Now, Mitch Marner, I don't think Mitch Marner is as good as Patrick Kane. I think he's great. I think he's an unbelievable player, and I think the Leafs are gonna have to pay him to keep him here, and I think that they will. But the whole negotiation is he may want what close to what Austin Matthews got, and Austin Matthews is a center, and so is John Tavares, and Mitch Marner and Darren Ferris are going to have to grasp what the problem is that he's a winger, and he could be paid the high, up to near what Kane is making as a winger in the end. But I think that's the scale that the Leafs are looking at around 9.5 to 10 million. And Marner's looking for more than that. So that might be the battle zone over the next few weeks before the draft and before free agency.
Look, when you're paying stars at this level with that much money, their salaries are not determined by an algorithm. They are determined by what the market will bear at that time. And humans make these decisions. Robert Ferrugia on our YouTube community platform. What's the Leafs plan with Andreas Borgman? Is he NHL ready, or are they overcooking him in the minors?
I don't think they're overcooking him. I think that, and remember, he's, I believe, 24. So at that point, there's probably not much more improvement you're going to get. I mean, players will gain more experience, but I saw enough of him at the AHL level last year to say that he's probably the same guy that was with the Leafs for the first half of the year 2 seasons ago. I think he's a borderline NHL or a 7-8. If they have to call him up, he can serve the role well. I don't think he's a top six defenseman. He may be put into that role next year, depending on how successful or unsuccessful Kyle Dubas is during the summer at acquiring defensemen. But he's another left-hand shot. So, on the side that they're really, really stocked, he's probably fourth or fifth or maybe sixth on the depth chart. But he might get some time early in the year with Dermott out with injury. But honestly, I don't think he's a guy who's eventually going to grow into a top six. I think he is what he is, and he's probably a 7, 8, 9, that type of defenseman.
Mike, we got into this in the last podcast, but Wigsy from Australia wants to know, given the Travis Dermott injury, should the Leafs bring back the legend, Ron Hainsey, on a 1-year deal?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the reason why that comes up, because you probably at 38 going on 39 can get him on a 1-year deal. I'm not sure how many interested parties are going to be out there, so maybe you can get him for a little less, although he was one of the leaders in plus minus last year. So, there might be interested parties on a 1-year deal, and that might drive the price up. And the overall problem with Hainsey is, if you're bringing him in to serve the role that we thought he was going to serve 2 years ago, great, which means bottom pairing, helping out a youngster, like if he's playing with Liljegren or if he's playing with Akali Rosen or something like that to stabilize the bottom pairing, fine. The problem is Mike Babcock likes his veterans. He likes Hainsey. And we know that if they sign him to another 1-year deal, he's going to end up on the top pairing with Morgan Riley. And I don't think this team goes anywhere when your top pairing is one guy is an all-star and the other one is a guy who should be on the bottom pairing. It's just not good for the overall success of the team. And in a way, it's like, can Kyle Dubas trust Mike Babcock to keep Ron Hainsey in the role that he should be in instead of the role that he always has put him in? And if that's not the case, then I don't think he's going to sign him. I think he'll, say it's going to be basically management by denial.
If the Leafs defense isn't better on paper than it was last season, are we expecting this team to be better than it was last season? That is what I'm curious about. Whether I'm not really concerned, because look, the Leafs will be good enough to win the Stanley Cup if and when they are. We can talk about it. We can expect certain players to come in and be better. We can run the stats. If they're not there, they're not there. It's up to them. It has nothing to do with me. We're just going to talk about it either way. But if Hainsey is back, Gardner's gone. Zaitsev's gone. Rasmus Sandin gets an outside crack. Timothy Liljegren is expected to be a part of the bottom pairing. How on earth is this team going to be better than it was last year, Mike?
Well, the only area where you could say there's room for growth is the maturation of, the Austin Matthewses and the Mitch Marners. I mean, those guys stepping up and becoming better players,
Sure.
And then that is obviously going to be a factor. But in the end, again, it is my belief that this team will only go as far as their defense takes
Sure.
them.
Yeah, no question. No question. Mike, look at the Raptors, okay? Kawhi Leonard, the best player in the playoffs, having one of the best playoff runs individually in NBA history. I mean, he's 14 games of 30 plus points. MJ did that a few times. 16 is the record. But if the Raptors weren't incredibly focused and tenacious on defense, the Raptors would not be playing right now. The Leafs could score an exorbitant amount of goals, but if they don't improve what we all know they need to improve upon by bringing in players who can help improve things, how on earth do we think they're going to progress going forward? And that right now, I just don't know where the answer lies. Holden Caulfield 2.0, wondering about the crazy Jeff Skinner extension and how that affects Mitch Marner. We addressed that. Holden Caulfield, we're waiting with bated breath to see just how many shekels one Mitch Marner is going to pull in when all is said and done. Cool and trending. Any idea who a reasonable backup for Anderson would be?
Well, I mean, maybe Michael Hutchinson, but I think they probably can find somebody. I mean, Hutchinson, I think that the key thing with the backup is going to be somebody who can play 25 to 30 games, because the trend, if you've noticed this year, especially, Tuukka Rask played 46 games and Halak played 40, and Jake Allen played over 30 games, and Binnington came up in January and played a ton of games, but he didn't play. The teams that have 60 plus game goaltenders have did not have a lot of success. And in this age of sports science, you would think that they would want their goaltenders to play less and not play 65 games like Freddie Anderson did two years in a row. So to answer the question, Garrett Sparks will not be the answer. And I'm convinced that Garrett Sparks will not be on the Maple Leafs next year. Maybe he goes to training camp, and if he doesn't make the team, which I don't think he will, he'll get waived and sent down to the Marlies or claimed by someone. But I do not believe that Garrett Sparks will be a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. One possibility, and I know that in The Athletic, they had a list of players who may get bought out. And I know that I think it was 3 years ago, the Leafs tried to sign Mike Condon, the goaltender used to be with Montreal, currently with Ottawa. Ottawa signed him to a 2-year deal. He's making $2.4 million. They're talking about buying him out. If they do buy him out, then I think the Leafs would be interested in Condon. And even if they don't buy him out, if the Senators retained 50% of the salary, that would probably be in the area where the Leafs would be interested in him. Now, there are other possibilities, but I just know based on previous interest that might be somebody that they would go after.
So 3 priorities in order. Let's rank them. I'll go first. Marner, defense, backup goaltender.
Defense, Marner, backup goaltender.
Yeah, I hear you.
Not only because I do not believe any of this leverage play bull crap of offer sheets, because I think that's all it is being floated out there as leverage and pressure points on teams. I do not believe Mitch Marner will sign an offer sheet with another team. And if he does,
good for him. Whatever.
Yeah, if he does, then and depending on where it is, enjoy Detroit or enjoy Philadelphia or wherever, and the Leafs will enjoy the 4 first-round picks.
I know a lot of people think that we are all pro Marner and all anti, who. It's not true. if Marner and his camp act like a bunch of dumb shits this offseason and hold the Leafs' feet to the fire in an irresponsible way, in a petulant, overly competitive way, I'm not down with those guys anymore. Okay? This whole situation with Marner and the Leafs is on the Marner camp. If they do the right thing, this guy will be back in Toronto, could be a Leaf for life. He will hopefully be a part of a Maple Leafs run to a cup and ultimately winning the damn thing. The defensive situation, that's on Dubas. That's on him. That's on Shanny. That's on the organization. That's on the Leafs. The Leafs really got to figure that out. And in terms of a backup, I mean, Mike Condon, bring back Curtis Joseph for 20 games. Look, I don't think it's the hardest thing in the world to find a more adequate replacement than Garrett Sparks. Mike, just a couple minutes left.
I think that it will be fairly easy to find a backup. So I think you're right on that. But the fact is that the Marner negotiation does affect the pursuit of a defenseman, because you have to be able to afford a defenseman. And that if you have 10 plus $1 million players, then someone has to move out to create the space for salary space for that top 4 defensemen. And, that, of course, I point back to Nylander, but if it isn't Nylander, then it's one of the guys they have to sign, like Kapanen or Janssen, who are probably on long-term deals, are looking for over $4 million. And if it's bridge deals in the twos. So, I mean, you have to sort of, you have to be able to balance things. And right now, there's an overabundance of forwards in this organization and not enough defense.
For Nylander to be moved out, you have to bring back something of great substance, because we know Nylander is a fantastic player. The contract is great. Term per year. It's really advantageous to the Leafs because of the player we're talking about, but it would also be opportunistic and advantageous to any team bringing him in. The Leafs would have to get something back of immediate impact. Andreas Janssen. We're not talking about a deal that has the same sort of magnitude. When I refer to the Maple Leafs not having the muscle in this Marner situation, what I'm saying is Marner and his camp know what the Leafs are up against. They know what the Leafs are trying to do. If they push the Leafs to the brink, to a position of extreme disadvantage, but having to sign Marner to a term that will put the entire team in a tough position going forward, then that's on the Marner camp. That's what I'm saying. Again, does it come down to just getting Marner everything he deserves and putting the team in a tough situation, or are they going to think that, look, Marner is born to be a Maple Leaf, he should be a Leaf, he might take it on the chin a little bit, but at the end of the day, he's still going to come out having won that battle. Last thing, Mike, Armorell. If the Leafs can't win a playoff round 3 years in a row, why the F should I believe they have a chance to pull off the big one in 2020? He's feeling pessimistic, Mike. Leave us with some optimism.
I understand being skeptical, and until they actually make the trade that I've sort of been advocating the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, it's completely understandable, but Kyle Dubas is a smart guy. I think he realizes, looking at this team and being on site, as an assistant general manager, and now last year as a general manager, what the team's weaknesses are. And I think he's prepared to address them. And I think it's a good thing that he has sort of taken a cue from Masai Ujiri in looking at what the Raptors did and being decisive and saying, okay, here's a popular player. We could keep this guy and we could make the playoffs every year and get to the second round, but we may never win it all. And Masai Ujiri basically said, screw it, I'm going to go for it. I know DeMar DeRozan's a good player and he's very popular, but Kawhi Leonard can get us a championship and I'll make the deal. And that he did it, and they're 1 game away. I think Dubas sees this as an opportunity. If there's a player that can make a difference, can make that happen, I think he's going to go for it. We'll see.
Don't think for a second Kyle Dubas isn't going to want to get down to business roll up his sleeves and make this team better after he watches the Raptors hoist that NBA championship trophy, because it's coming. Michael, enjoy the week. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Norman.
We would like to thank Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough, title sponsor of the Leafs Convo, demonstrating passion for the industry and a superior level of excellence in selling, leasing, and marketing your property. Vanguard Northeast Realty.